A few weeks ago, during a company meeting, someone asked for some ideas to break a late night cookies and ice cream habit. This person said, and I quote, "It's like I turn into a child at 9 p.m. and I have to have my cookies and my ice cream before bed. This needs to stop." And I mean, I could relate. I don't think that there is any human on the planet who, at any given time, doesn't have at least one habit that really needs to get kicked to the curb. Well, it turns out that there's a simple 2-word fix that can dramatically increase our ability to resist temptation, and it gives us a better chance to make a better choice. Now, this is based on research done by Dr. Vanessa Patrick. She's a professor of marketing at the University of Houston who published her findings on the power of self-talk in the Journal of Consumer Research. She found that when participants framed a refusal as "I don't," for instance, "I don't eat chocolate cake" or "I don't eat sugar," instead of "I can't," they were more successful at resisting the desire to eat unhealthy foods or skip the gym. In fact, they found that when it came to deciding whether to eat certain foods, saying "I don't" was nearly 3 times as effective as saying no and about 8 times more effective than saying "I can't." Very interesting, right? I don't versus I can't. 2 teeny tiny words that can make a ginormous difference. And here's why. When we say "I don't," we are empowered. We're determined. We are at choice. It's a tough, strong phrase like "end of story." But when we say "I can't," we disempower ourselves. It sounds like we're not allowed to do something by some outside force. You know what? We make ourselves feel deprived when we say "I can't." And in essence, we make ourselves weak, whiny little bitches like, "Wah, I can't have a cookie." Now, what's even cooler, though, is that we can tuck this little trick into every corner of our lives. We can start making some clear, strong declarations like this. I don't eat Skinny Pop every night.
My salary or my earnings were published all over the place. I mean, the first year I was like, really? Did I make that much money? Oh my God. It was very difficult for me to figure out where my boundaries were because I'd grown up poor and didn't have anything. So it's easy when you don't have anything and people ask you for money. And they say, "I need $500. You say, "I don't have it because I'm just trying to get my rent paid." It's harder when your multi-million-dollar salary is now in the paper and you get a lot of friends and cousins you didn't have before. So how do you set boundaries for yourself? I was having trouble setting boundaries for myself for even strangers. People would just show up at my door in Chicago and say, "Oh, bro, I left my husband, please help me." And I would, because she knows I have it. So don't try that now, though, okay? Don't try that now. I figured it out. So what I learned is that, the reason why people keep showing up is because my intention is to make them think that I'm such a nice person that you can ask me for anything, you can get me to do anything, I'm gonna say yes, I'm gonna say yes. So when Stevie called me this time, I thought I'd try out my first no on Stevie. Let's start big. He wanted me to donate some money to a charity, and I didn't want to donate to the charity because I have my own charities and I care about a lot of people, but the problem is when you have money, everybody thinks you just want to give to everything. So every letter I ever get starts with, "We know you love the children." Yes, I do love the children, but somebody else is going to have to help the children. So I said to Stevie, no. And as a person who has that disease to please, I was waiting for him then to say, "I will never speak to you again. I will never call you. I will never sing a song for you." And he didn't. He just said, "Okay." "Okay? Okay, it's okay?" He said, "Okay, check you later." And what I learned from that is, many times you will have angst and worry about things, and put yourself in a state, like someone said this morning because their phone went off, they were mortified over a phone. I said, really? You will put yourself in a state when the other person really isn't even thinking about you. So learning that I could specifically determine for myself what the boundaries were for me, what I wanted to do, give my money, give my time, give of my service to who I wanted to give it to when I did, that I get to make that decision. And just because you get 100 requests a week doesn't mean you have to try to fulfill all of that. Just because you have all of these demands on your time and on you doesn't mean that you have to say yes. You get to decide because you're the master of your fate. The captain of your soul, as William Ernest Henley said in Invictus. And understanding that really changed the meaning of my life in that I was no longer driven by what other people wanted me to do, but took charge of my own destiny, making choices based upon what do I feel is the next right move for me.
Stronger the emotional reaction you have to some experience in your life, the higher the emotional quotient, the more you pay attention to the cause. And the moment the brain puts all of its attention on the cause, it takes a snapshot, and that's called a memory. So long-term memories are created from very highly emotional experiences. So what happens then is that people think neurologically within the circuitry of that experience, and they feel chemically within the boundaries of those emotions. And so when you have an emotional reaction to someone or something, most people think that they can't control their emotional reaction. Well, it turns out if you allow that emotional reaction, it's called a refractory period, to last for hours or days, that's called a mood. I say to someone, hey, what's up? You say, I'm in a mood. Well, why are you in a mood? Well, I had this thing happen to me 5 days ago, and I'm having one long emotional reaction. If you keep that same emotional reaction going on for weeks or months, that's called temperament. Why is he so bitter? I don't know, let's ask him. Why is he so bitter? Why are you bitter? Well, I had this thing happen to me 9 months ago. And if you keep that same emotional reaction going on for years on end, that's called a personality trait. And so learning how to shorten your refractory period of emotional reactions is really where the work starts. So then, people, when they have an event, what they do is they keep recalling the event because the emotions of stress hormones, the survival emotions, are saying, pay attention to what happened because you want to be prepared if it happens again. Turns out most people spend 70% of their life living in survival and living in stress. So they're always anticipating the worst case scenario based on a past experience. And they're literally, out of the infinite potentials in the quantum field, they're selecting the worst possible outcome, and they're beginning to emotionally embrace it with fear. And they're conditioning their body into a state of fear. Do that enough times, body has a panic attack without you. You can't even predict it because it's programmed subconsciously. So then you say to the person, why are you this way? And they'll say, I am this way because of this event that happened to me 15 or 20 years ago. And what that means from a biological standpoint is that they haven't been able to change since that event. So then the emotions from the experience tend to give the body and the brain a rush of energy. So people become addicted to the rush of those emotions, and they use the problems and conditions in their life to reaffirm their limitation, so at least they can feel something. So now when it comes time to change, you say to the person, why are you this way? Well, every time they recall the event, they're producing the same chemistry in their brain and body as if the event is occurring, firing and wiring the same circuits and sending the same emotional signature to the body. Well, what's the relevance behind that? Well, your body is the unconscious mind. It doesn't know the difference between the experience that's creating the emotion and the emotion that you're creating by thought alone. So the body's believing it's living in the same past experience 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And so then when those emotions influence certain thoughts, and they do, and then those thoughts create the same emotions, and those same emotions influence the same thoughts, now the entire person's state of being is in the past. So then the hardest part about change is not making the same choices you did the day before, period. And the moment you decide to make a different choice, get ready, because it's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel unfamiliar. There's going to be some uncertainty. I think that the bigger thing is that we keep firing and wiring those circuits. They become more hardwired. So you have a thought and then the program runs. But it's the emotion that follows the thought. If you have a fearful thought, you're going to feel anxiety. The moment you feel anxiety, your brain's checking in with your body and saying, yeah, you're pretty anxious. So then you start thinking more corresponding thoughts equal to how you feel. Well, the redundancy of that cycle conditions the body to become the mind. So now, when it comes time to change, a person steps into that river of change and they make a different choice, and all of a sudden, they don't feel the same way. So the body says, well, you've been doing this for 35 years. You're going to just stop suffering and stop feeling guilty and stop feeling shameful, and you're not going to complain or blame or make excuses or feel sorry for yourself. Well, the body's in the unknown. So the body says, I want to return back to familiar territory. So the body starts influencing the mind, and it says, start tomorrow. You're too much like your mother. You'll never change. This isn't going to work for you. This doesn't feel right. And so if you respond to that thought as if it's true, that same thought will lead to the same choice, which will lead to the same behavior, which will create the same experience, which will produce the same emotion.
I've been given the user's manual for the most powerful tool that we're aware of. That's right. And so the great news, I know you being an athlete and a successful businessman, you have discipline. You cannot
you can't achieve results
without some kind of discipline.
Exactly.
And so we know that there's some fundamental truths to achieving success. And every successful person will tell you, and Jim Rohn is, I know you love Jim Rohn, he said, you either pay the price of discipline or you pay the price of regret. Discipline weighs ounces, regret weighs tons.
That's good.
But the thing is, can you teach discipline? The answer is yes.
How?
But you have to have a willing participant. And if the participant's reason why is big enough, if they know I want to achieve X, and the reason why, the motive for their action, motivation, the motive for their action is a reason beyond just themselves, chances are they will do more to achieve that success than if it was just left up to their own. But there are some people that are born, with incredible drive. They just have this insatiable drive, and they'll just, I'll do whatever it takes for the things that I want. And there's other people that want things, but they just don't have this insatiable drive. And this is where, as much as I hated school, I love to use school as an analogy. In the game of life, whether it's health, wealth, relationships, career, business, spirituality, fun experiences, you have to decide what level of the game do I want to play at. Is it the grade school level, the kindergarten level, the high school level, the university level, the pro level? Because each one of those levels requires a totally different mindset and totally different skill set. They're building blocks on each other, but if you are extremely talented, but you're not prepared to practice and rehearse and drill and fall and fail forward to the next attempt, you will never make it as a pro. You will never make it as a pro business person. You'll never make it as a pro husband or wife or athlete or musician. You just never will. So just get used to that if you're not prepared to pay the price. If you are prepared to pay the price and you have the aptitude and the talent, now we're talking about there's some real potential here. And what we don't know is, what's in your heart? Like, what is the fire that stirs you, that you wake up saying, I will do this even when I don't feel like it. I will do whatever it takes to overcome my temptation for mediocrity, my temptation for excuses, my temptation for reasons and circumstances to hold me back. I won't allow those to be in my way. And if you have that within you, you'll achieve whatever you choose.
Right.
And so the question you asked before is, how do you develop that? Start small. Start small. So if you don't have discipline, show yourself that you can give yourself one command and one follow through. So you know what? Right now I'm going to get up and I'm going to do 2 push-ups. Right now, not like later, now. Can you give yourself a simple command, 1 sit-up? Right now, I'm going to go get a glass of water. You start with something ridiculous. I learned many years ago, reduce it to the ridiculous. So if I reduce it to the ridiculous, and I say, can you do that? Great, will you? Because that's the difference right there. That's the razor's edge. The people who can,
will you?
Will you?
Yeah.
Great. When?
Now.
Yeah. Right. So if you develop that skill, and specifically from a brain plasticity, a neuroplasticity perspective, as soon as you do that, you give yourself a command and you take the action, you have just created a neural pattern that you can give yourself a command and take action. Now, that may just be one time. Well, what if you did that every hour by putting a little bell on your computer? And every hour, like if my computer was open, I'd have every hour it would say, it's 12 o'clock, it's 1 o'clock. And
Really?
I'd take 60 seconds just to be in control of my mind. 60 seconds, I don't care where I am.
Stop what you're doing.
Stop, take 6 breaths,
Breathe.
just get centered. Am I on track? Am I off track? Am I doing something I shouldn't be doing versus a high impact activity that I need to be doing? Every hour, I've trained myself to just reset. I didn't always do that. So I just started with 1 a day.
Right.
Then 2.
Sure.
Then 3. Then it was working so well, I said, great, let's do this every hour.
I talked to addiction to distraction is the death of your creative production. There is research coming out now saying that the average person checks their phone 200 to 500 times every single day. As I share in my book, The 5 a.m. Club, your phone is costing you your fortune. If you look at the great geniuses of the world, the Shakespeares and the Basquiats and the Beethovens, the great chefs and the great titans of industry and the great humanitarians, all great thinkers have one thing in common. They spent long periods of time away from diversions, distractions, trivial interruptions. So you can be like the majority, being busy, or you can be a history maker and a legendary producer and not being on your phone, not playing with technology every second, not being addicted to that white screen. You don't get to do both. And I'm going to get right into the first habit that will help you beat digital distraction, and that's build your tight bubble of total focus. So there's a relatively new term coming out right now called digital dementia. Digital dementia. We are spending so much time in front of our screens that we are waking up with this full well of cognitive bandwidth. In other words, our gifts and our glory in terms of our brain's capacity. We wake up and we're ready to go. And then what happens is, in terms of digital dementia, we check our phone, we check our email, we check for likes, we watch a video, we play with an app, and every single piece of attention that we give to one of those distractions is stealing your cognitive bandwidth. This is really important. You wake up full of cognitive potential, full of the ability to be creative and productive. And every single time you check your screen, some of your cognitive bandwidth, that's the term that the researchers and neuroscientists use, is left on the screen. Another term is called attention residue. You leave a residue of your attention on the screen. And then you turn on the news, more of your attention is left on the news. And then you check for email, more of that attention residue is left on the email. And then you'll find it's 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning and you can't focus and your creativity is depleted. Well, it's not because you can't bring on your fire to dominate your domain. It's because you haven't managed yourself like the pros do. And so the first excellent habit to beat digital distraction is installing this metaphorical tight bubble of total focus around yourself so that you don't let distractions in. Just imagine you have this bubble. It's like a 5-foot bubble around you. It's a porous bubble. So creative things, inspirational things, high vibration, joyful, excellent, amazing people get in. The right spaces get in. And anything that is toxic, anything that is a trivial distraction, which is generally because you have an addiction to it, we'll talk about that later in this episode, doesn't get in. And so really, it's very valuable to get lost. It's very, most people are available to everyone. The phone rings and they pick it up and they answer it. Well, if you do that, you're letting someone else's priorities run your day versus you running your day by your priorities. Tight bubble of total focus could also mean that You set up your ecosystem and your environments so that there's no distraction. Tight bubble of total focus could mean that you spend long periods of your day alone working on those 1 or 2 projects that are your Sistine Chapel ceilings.